Hey everybody, and welcome back to 97% Fire, the home of home recording. Now in today's project I'm going to try and solve a problem that I made myself using two of my favourite things, physics and hammers. Probably more of one than the other. The problem is this. I moved the drum kit, which sounded amazing in this corner, out of the way of the doors so I could get into the room, but now the drum fires straight against the radiator. And what we're going to do is build some diffusers. Now, if you don't know what a diffuser is, it's designed to evenly distribute the sound, as opposed to a radiator, which is designed to evenly distribute heat. Just wanted to start by saying a massive hello to all the new subscribers. Really cool to see, very humbling indeed. Now, if you are new to the channel, let me just explain something really quickly so you might not be too disappointed. Episode 1 to 10 of this series was indeed recorded as my final project last year when I attended university to study a master's in sound engineering. So some of it's really complicated and a bit drawn out, and that is because it's for a lecturer to see. It was originally private videos. Now, after that, episode 10 onwards, we started to do YouTube stuff. I hadn't done YouTube before, which is pretty obvious from the first few episodes, but now we have a home studio. We've decided we're going to keep it and upgrade it, and that's where you join us. So welcome. So this is the studio. Let me give you a quick tour. And then if we go through here, we have the control room. Now, this was an office, and next door was a dining room, and you can see how we built the whole thing from start to finish. The university assignment, episodes 1 to 10 especially, are actually all Harvard referenced. So if you are at university or you are doing a uni course or a college course, and there's anything you see that you'd like to nick, feel free to do so. You can have a look at the website and you can get all the referencing for all the research. It has been passed by academics and proven to be mostly correct, which is fantastic. So knock yourself out. Let me know how you get on. Right, on with the chaos. So I was lucky enough to work for the BBC for 10 years, including at Maidavale Studios. So we're going to try and make a cut down version of this diffusion in our own studio, but for free. So this is what we're going to be using as the basis of our diffuser. This was pulled out of the skip, and as you can see, it was dismantled in a I'm going into a skip format using mild violence and hammers, I'd imagine. I don't know for sure. So the first thing to do is to remove all the hardware. There are several Allen key headed bolts. So we'll take those out, and then we shall play kindling jigsaw. And we'll try and work out what bits we have and what bits are missing, what bits we might need to remake, and what bits we can fix. Once that is established, we'll then clean up all the joints, get rid of any old glue, excess splinters, that sort of stuff, and then we can apply new glue. We can then clamp it back together and leave it for a few hours to dry. Now, part of the challenge with things like this is to upcycle. So it turned out that one of the legs actually fitted better if I put it on upside down because there was less splitting and cracking. So that's what we've done there. Now, if you're not particularly into carpentry or you don't have a garage or workshop, you could always just pop to the garden centre and buy some trellis. So the original idea was to get some trellis from the garden centre, but then I realised it's more expensive than gold. It is the next day, actually it's 2 days later. Time to release the clamps and see what we've got. Boom. Now, this bit here, or is it there, I don't have enough clamps to do, so I'm going to have to clamp that again. Now that I've got one back, so I'll fix that. But the rest of it, how's that look on camera? You see? Oh, there we go. There you go. Fixed. Pretty much. An invisible repair. So what we'll do, let's get all those released, clamp up the other bit again, and then I think I'll cut them all so they're the same size. Now, in case you're wondering, this is actually called a hole, H-O-L, and it's from IKEA. And they reckon it's a side table that has generous storage space underneath the lid. Perfect for things like blankets in a hallway, or a sofa, or a bed. It doesn't mention acoustic panels anywhere, but, you know, do what you can. So we weren't able to fix this bit, as it was missing, probably in a skip somewhere. But that's okay. So what I'm going to do next is to mark the perimeter of each of the panel and then cut them out so they are roughly the same size. Now the reason I want them the same size is because I might stack them up, for example, and use them as a guitar ISO cabinet, or I can use them individually. Bit of flexibility. Top woodworking tip. This is a rail I've made out of MDF. Basically you measure the distance, take the battery out so I don't cut my hand up. You measure the distance from the blade to the back of the saw, yeah, and then you screw a piece of wood there, and that will mean that your saw will slide perfectly up and down the rail, yeah, giving you a perfectly straight cut every time. And all you have to do is line up the piece of wood with the pencil marks. Hopefully. There you go. So now we've got one of the mended and cut to size panels. I've laid that on the lid of the box, which is a lot bigger as you can see. And to make it the same size is dead easy. Just draw around it. And there is a section missing at the end, so we need to cut a piece of wood off and make a new end panel. So as you can see here, we have cut off the end of the box, the excess, to 20mm, which is exactly the same as one of the slats. I will then cut off the top of the box, so it's nice and flat, and glue that bit back on. Bob's your uncle, although he's not called Bob. I think we established that last time. So quickly make sure they're all the right size, chop the old bit off, and glue the new bit on, clamp and leave to set. That's right, health and safety fans, it's Deadly Workshop tool time. This is a 1970s table saw. And what we're going to do here is find the centre of the board. We've already put the fence in at 100mm because it's a 200mm board. And then we could do a little mark with the blade, flip the board over, then try again, and the blade should go in exactly the same place, meaning that we're in the centre of the board and not wasting any material. Now we're ripping this 200mm board down in half to 100mm because we have 50mm safe and sound Rockwool insulation, and we're going to use 2 layers of that in the panel. Now, if you don't have one of these saws, you can actually buy them in the UK from your local budget supermarket. It's great. Get your milk, your eggs, and your light industrial machinery. You'll also note that we are using a push stick and ear defenders and dust extraction.
So here is a top tip, which means you can cut perfect side and top pieces for your acoustic panels without the need to use a tape measure at all, and also they will be 100% perfect. Now the way I've done this is I set up the chop saw, which is turned off and unplugged. I lock it into position and then I push the trellis piece so it touches the blade. So effectively that is where it would cut. I then use a stop that I've made. Here's one I prepared earlier. And I put that at the end of the trellis. So the trellis touches the stop at one end and the blade at the other. Now these 2 points are fixed, and that means that when I remove the trellis and put in the side panels, I can cut each one to exactly the same perfect length each time, which will result in me having 6 identical side panels without the need to use a tape measure. So now we have our 6 perfect side pieces, 3 per panel. We need to do the same trick for the top, but this time they're going to be 2 pieces of wood wider to allow for the sides. So same thing, we lock the saw into position after unplugging it and turning it off. We then place the top of the trellis this time against the saw blade, effectively giving us the cut position. We then place 2 offcuts which represent the 2 side panels, which will give us the correct thickness, and then we install the stop. So we have a trellis and 2 side panels. Now I've put them together, but when we do the construction obviously they will be one either side.
Now I haven't actually showed it yet, but I'm also making 2 smaller panels, so the same principle applies to those. So now that all the pieces are cut, we lay them out on the bench and we do a dry test fit just before we start to do anything exciting with glue and nails. As you can see, I've got 6 side pieces and 6 top pieces that all match, and they are for the large panels. I have also made 4 side pieces and 4 top pieces for the 2 side panels, which were originally from the cupboard. Now you can see the wood is painted, and that's because it used to be an old wardrobe that was also found in the skip. So because this is reclaimed wood and we'd like it to look somewhat smart for the studio, I'm going to give it a quick sand using this P80 sandpaper. Nicely done, sir, thank you. Now this should take 2 or 3 seconds for you to watch, but in reality this took hours and hours and hours, so it might be easier just to go and buy some new wood from the local DIY store, although that's not very environmentally friendly or sustainable, which is why I did this. Although of course you could argue that the amount of electricity I used sanding it offset the amount of wood that I could have thrown away, but who knows.
With only a mild case of hand and arm vibration syndrome, I get on with building the box. To do this, I clamp a scrap piece of wood to the edge of the frame. That just gives me something to push up against, giving you a nice flat joint, as you'll be able to see in a second. Then I glue and pin the rest of the box together. Look at that. Nicely done. Alright, don't milk it. Now, after that's done, I drop in the... Come on, what did I say? I drop in the trellis, and again, a few pins around the edge just to hold it in place. And then I repeat the process for the other small box, and then the 3 larger boxes. Now, top tip, if you are doing this with a compressed nail gun, make sure you check that you don't get your staple gun out of the toolbox first, because that really would be quite embarrassing. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've done all this time lapse and not once have you done one with that amazing music. Well, stand by.
So there we have the finished carcasses. We're just going to let these dry. Some of the wool is a bit twisted, so I had to clamp them up using straps and stuff. And the wood's not perfect, it's got nicks in it, but that's because it is second hand, but it is also, more importantly, free. Wobbly cam. Okay, so this is the finished article. As you can see, it is not perfect. These are just butt joints. You could do lovely dovetail joints, and you can also see there's a slight gap down the middle. I could have routed a rebate, but it is good enough for who it is for. Right, let's get the insulation in. Professional upholsterers, look away now.
Now, I've only ever covered one panel before, which was in one of the very early episodes, which was part of the university project, and approached that very much like a wrapping a birthday present affair with hospital corners. For this one, I wanted to try and get a bit better and also have a better finish. So I discovered eventually, after some trial and error, that if you were to cut the piece of material roughly sort of 25mm wider than the inside of the box, that will give just enough room for the material to go up the edges, as you can see here. And then you can also staple gun it and hide the staples, which is what I did. So nice and neat. And these are just 10mm heavy duty staples. So I staple one end and then I pull the material tight, and then I just work my way around. And the actual results were fairly pleasing. Now, the purpose for doing this is mainly to stop the particles of the fiberglass from coming out, because you don't really want to breathe those in. But I did get quite good at it towards the end. So if you have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or anything like that that you would want to have reupholstered, do let us know in the comments, and I'll pop round with my staple gun.
Wobbly cam. There we have the finished upholstered, for want of a better phrase, units. Now all we need to do is make them sound resistant in some way using this. Prepare yourself to itch.
To make for a neater job, I've put an extra 25mm batten round the top of each box, and that will give the blue material something to staple to, and then I can cover this rather than having rough edges or being able to see the staples. So this process is dead simple. All you do is cut your Rockwool to size. This happens to be exactly the same width as the box. What are the chances? And then, same as before, stretch the material over and then staple it home using a heavy duty staple gun. Carefully trim off the ends. And I have also made some covering strips, same thing again on the table saw, just 3 or 4 mil wide, run them through, give them a sand. Now these cover up the staples, and they also help hold the material in place. It is super thin, so you can actually cut it with some robust scissors. Some glue will hold it all into place, and some tiny 15 mil pins. Now, not all insulation is created equally. So make sure if you are building acoustic panels, especially if you're in a home studio, that it is fire retardant. Now, the stuff I have got here is, I was lucky enough to be given this by a friend of mine who owns a building company. You can actually pick this up free or relatively cheap. If you have a look on, for example, Facebook Marketplace, sometimes you might find somebody that has had some building work done or some alterations, and they have some insulation left over from a large project. So a good place to get it there.
Wobbly cam. So there we have the finished article. One thing to note, when I pinned these, I actually ran out of tacks. So it's just making holes that weren't actually fixed. So when I turned it over, they all fell off, which is annoying. So I've got some more nails. There we go. So as you can see on the back, it is a standard sound panel, and on the front it is a standard plus diffusory sound panel, and hopefully we can stack them up, stick them to the wall, move them all around, do loads of stuff with them. Right, 4 more to go.
So we lined the inside and added the buttons. We then added the insulation. We then covered the insulation and staple gun this down. We then covered the staple gun holes with the trim. We then gave it a quick clean and a bit of a sand. Job's done. Back to the studio.
Time for the big reveal. There we have, fresh from the garage, diffusion / acoustic panels. Now, I didn't film this bit, but I have also made, excuse the mess, some freestanding legs. Now, the panels slide in and out of those as and when, and they also make them really useful to move about. So they are actually really light. And I'll just spin that round. Needs a hoover. But there you can see, we now have different types of treatment. That's going to be handy for the drum kit, so we can do some practice recordings. And now we're firing the bass drum are either an acoustic panel or a diffuser instead of a radiator, which is cool. They also fit beautifully in front of the guitar amp. So if I wanted to do some isolated guitar style recording, I can. Now the 2 little ones are probably going to go in my office / control room, and I shall run the sound reference ID to see what, if any, difference they make. But there you go. I think they look quite smart. And I like the fact that it's all flexible, so I can try stuff if it doesn't work. I maybe try it in front of the bass amp, or if I'm doing an acoustic guitar. Wonderful. That's it. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If so, please do leave me a comment. And if there's anything else you'd like me to build, let me know, because I thoroughly enjoyed that project. Thanks for watching.